Hey, everybody, welcome back to Conversations in Ken's Café. I'm your host, Ken Somerville. We have Adam coming back with us, and this is a guy that's growing in a desert outside of Las Vegas, closer to Death Valley than Vegas. So, if you want to know how to grow in a desert environment, this is a guy that you want to follow and listen to. But, Adam, thank you so much for coming back. It's a pleasure to have you back on to share your life experiences and your story of growing in a desert.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here again. Thank you so much, Ken, for making time for me to be here. I'm more than stoked to always do these, so I want to keep doing them as much as possible as I can. Even with how busy everything's getting out here, because the heat is on and it's starting to come up. We're hitting the 80s already, mid 80s to even high 80s some days. So things are heating up, and we're trying to get everything climatized as much as possible, so then it's all prepared and ready for the heat. So.
Well, I know we're supposed to be around that 80 here in about 5 days. I don't know for how long, but for Alberta, that's pretty warm up here in Canada. We don't normally have to deal with those really high temperatures like you guys do. At least, for us, it's just a day here and there. But you're really in a very special environment because you started out, not really having soil, just having sand, and you're creating a soil and having that environment. And we've talked about how you've been doing that. But we were talking before the show, and what's that one tool, Adam, that you really can't do without? I want to tell people about that because it's so important when you're growing to have this one tool.
Yes. One tool is a Leatherman. This thing saves lives, guys. I'm serious. I lived by this since I was in middle school. And I have yet to see anyone in my generation be walking around with one of these except for myself. And people be like, what is that? What do you have a Leatherman for? I'm like, why do I have a Leatherman? Because when you guys need something done, I'm going to be the guy that's going to be fixing it. And I will not get caught dead without it. And it's always been a Leatherman. And somehow, even my past job, which helped me to get into this whole regenerative movement and all that stuff, working with a solar company that's no longer existing or anything, but I got it from them. Yep. I got extra points. They had a store online and stuff, and I was able to get those things where I was getting my farm going here and stuff. And so I was lucky enough to get at least prepared for that, and that's that one little piece that I kind of carry with me all the time, so I can fix anything. I don't have to go back to the shop and get tools and all that. I can just whip this out really quick. I got a screwdriver. Got all sorts of tools in there, two different types of flatheads. This thing, I just figured out that's for making holes. You can thread a hole and stuff, if you need to get something started there. And then on this side, we got a can opener. A lot of times you see these things and didn't even know that's a can opener. You can open a can of whatever you need from that. So many times I can't find my can opener, so I just bust this out and then start using that, especially for dog food and stuff. And then it got a little screwdriver here, and this thing can actually flip over and go to a thinner one because not every single Phillips is the same size. So you can see that, So those are the basic ones. And then we got the blades, of course, that come out. Set of scissors so you can cut whatever. If you can't cut it with the knife, which we have on this side. This is actually a saw, different type of saw here. But then we got the knife, of course, the typical knife there and stuff. And every single Leatherman works differently, guys. It's amazing tools. There's different types. This is a surge. There's different ones. But then this has a saw too. So if I don't want to go and get something to prune a tree down or something, I just use this bad boy and stuff. So and it's also important to kind of keep it clean. And this one's a little bit dirty. You got to hit it with some isopropyl, but yeah, if you're hitting anything with trees or plants or anything when you're using these, make sure you sterilize because you can bring diseases around that way. But it's a nice, quick, easy way just to get something done, without having to reset.
Well, and what you were talking or we were talking about earlier is if you're out in your grow or your field, etc., and you run across a problem and you don't have the tool right with you, you'd actually have to run back. Take that time to run to the shop, grab the tool, come back. And for a farmer, that 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes makes a whole hell of a lot of difference of what you can get done in a day. That's why a tool like that is so important. So if you're a new homesteader, that's one of the tools you want to have on your hip.
Get it.
And I watch a lot of homesteaders that have, they bought 100 acres and they're going out and they're exploring their property, and anything can happen. You can trip, fall, break a leg, need to make a crutch. You don't have a saw with you. You got a Leatherman that you can cut that branch,
Mm-hmm.
and you can literally, like you said, it can save lives.
Yeah. Yeah, it brought me all the way back even to middle school when I first started to get introduced to the Leatherman. I actually carved my own bow using a Leatherman the first time I got one when I was a
Cool.
kid. Yeah, I made my own bow out of that thing, and then I kind of like improved it later with like using a Dremel, because that thing's like a multi drill kind of
Yep.
thing too. It had a sander bit, it had all sorts of stuff that you could do with it. So I've always been really fascinated with multi tools and just being able to use just a couple tools to be able to create so many different things, and fix so many different things. And that's very important on that sense. But yeah, like I said, you can make a bow out of it. I think you survive pretty well out of that, take your shoelace or whatever, and there you go. You're ready to go. There's a couple arrows. You could carve all that with it. So yeah, get one.
And that's one of the keys, is creating what you need. And most people, they go, oh, well, I want a bow and arrow. Well, I'm going to go to the store and get one. Where if you're in a situation where you can't just run to the store, all of a sudden you can make a bow and arrow, you can make a spear, you can do all of these things that can literally, save your life. Like I said, you're out by Death Valley. There's not a store really, really close. Like for me to run to town, it's an hour round trip. So you don't want to do that. And like you got the heat, I got have the cold up here. But if you're out in minus 40 and you're driving, in the back country, you're not close to anything, that's a tool that can literally save your life if you hit the ditch, or if you're, a deer runs out and you smash your vehicle and can't go anywhere. You can make what you need to survive. You can create a fire, etc. But other than that, Adam, we talked about a couple of other things as well that a farmer is generally going to have. Like, I'm an old farm boy, binder twine and baling wire. Okay.
Yes.
And we talked about how you use that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I use them definitely for fixing fences around here. You'll see all sorts of colors from all the hay bale twine that I've been tying up. These different type of things, like even pallets, because it helps to do those instead of having to go and buy those expensive fencing and stuff. Our whole goat pen is actually made from these pallets and stuff tied together with binder twine, until I could go over their back and put some screws in and connect them correctly, But the binder twine, that stuff really holds really well. And it's another way of just getting the extra use out of it. So it's just not going straight to like a landfill or anything like that, Growing up, even my grandpa, his wife actually used the hay bale twines to make like rugs and stuff, because there's so much of them, to braid them up together and make some sort of like rugs or like little mats where you could put like little hot plate mats and all that stuff too made out of them and stuff, just to repurpose stuff. And that's another really big important thing that you need to start doing too as a homesteader, is just learning how to repurpose things. So not so much trash collects up and not so much stuff is going to landfills and all that, especially if you're in a place where that doesn't get a local trash delivery and stuff. So yeah.
Well, and that's just it. Like I have grown up with my grandparents, same thing. We would actually go to the dump, what my grandfather called the nuisance ground, and we would take a load there. And damned if we wouldn't be searching around and bringing a load home of other people what they thought was junk. But hey, man, I could use that to build this, especially as a kid, and you let your imagination go, and all of a sudden, hey, I just built a canoe, I built a fort, out of other people's junk, or what they consider junk. But reusing stuff is a way of life for a good farmer, because you don't want to take that stuff to the garbage. You don't want to fill up that landfill. You'd rather reuse it, repurpose it, because hey, a farmer's life is all about making money or keeping money in your pocket. That penny you don't spend can be considered a penny earned.
That's right. That's 100% right. And it's no it's just no shock to me that I actually started to go down this whole agriculture, area and stuff because of the way I did grow up. I ended up, there's like a little thrift store on our corner of our place, and it's called like the Bargain Corner or something like that.
Yeah.
And I used to go over there and go in the back of it and like do dumpster diving. So anything that they didn't sell on this stuff, they'd throw away. Like they'd be like fans and all these different types of things with electric motors, and they always just fascinated me. So I was always kind of inquisitive like that. And I'll take those things and I'll start like learning how they work, by taking them apart and seeing if I could put it back together or fix it or repurpose it and reuse it for something else. Like I ended up building like a little hovercraft actually out of a vacuum.
Cool.
And that was pretty cool. It's a vacuum, a used tube, one of those snow tubes, and duct tape and cardboard as a main surface. And I was sliding around my kitchen with that thing. And it was pretty awesome.
Well, it's amazing what you can create if you allow your mind to go there. Like taking a bunch of fans and making a hovercraft is absolutely possible. People don't think that things can be reused, but that fan motor, if you actually change the winding, it actually becomes a generator. So that fan blade spinning in the wind, you can actually generate power with that.
That's right. And yeah, and I actually got my first, electrical 101 electrical classes by flipping a few breakers and learning how those things worked. Mom wasn't too happy about all that, but I was having fun.
Well, yeah, it's all about fun. It's mom's going, "You're gonna kill yourself, you silly bugger!" Like smack.
Yeah. Holes in the carpets and stuff from it short circuiting and all that. You learn really quick which wire is hot and which wire is not.
Yep, exactly, right? So let's talk about some of the other tools that Adam uses on a regular basis on his farm.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that I use, I consider it as a tool, but definitely you got to have like a notepad and a pen. Like these two things are a total different way of like being able to make sure that you're taking care of your tasks. Because the minute you start going around your farm and you start realizing that you have way too many projects, which I'm pretty sure anyone's homesteading has ever experienced, you realize how much stuff needs to be done from the house itself to the farm, to what you got to build and all that stuff. So organization is really important. And just writing it in your phone doesn't do the same thing as actually writing it by hand. And so it's very important just to have that task list, start writing things down. Usually the ideas start coming really early in the morning and stuff. And so, just have that even by your bed set, because sometimes it'd be 2 a.m. and you find yourself, you can't sleep because you got so much to do. Start writing them down and put your mind to ease that way. And just being able to, breathe and write it down and then take that list later and then make it into a what I call a possible list, which is like how much you can actually do in one day. Like what is actually possible for you to be able to do. And so you have to start taking out that list and start kind of organizing that. What could wait until tomorrow? What needs to be done today? And where you need to focus on. So that's another part of the tools that I use. Besides that, it depends on what kind of tasks come from that list. Will also depend on what I'm going to be running around the farm in. So I usually have my ATV. That's a quick way of transporting from here to there and stuff, because it's a 5-acre lot and stuff. So I do have to get to one place and then go back to another place pretty dang quick. And so I like to always use like a 5-gallon bucket too, and just fill that up with whatever tools that I feel that I could use that's in common for what I need to do that day. So for example, I had to plant a few trees and stuff. So I had to grab some stuff like gardening shovels and then like, a spade shovel, throw that in the back there. And then always usually have like a hand drill with like the bits and stuff in it, because that helps to make things go a lot faster too. If you have to do any holes, I found out about an auger bit that could actually go into a drill, so you could drill holes out really quickly and easily with that, rather than having to use one of those big, huge ones with the motors and stuff. And then you have to take care of that, clean the carburetor and all that stuff with those once they sit too long. And that's a whole nother, time out of the pocket there too, to have to fix, gas powered utensils and stuff. So sometimes it's better to go a little electric, but then you have to make sure the batteries are charged, or if the battery's going to hold as long and all that. So, it's a balancing, and it's just a matter of what you have written down on that list and what you have to be taken care of to be able to really understand what you're going to need to be using on every day. work around the
Well,
farm.
and it's really important, and a lot of people don't, like you said, they put it in their phone, but it's not the same in your mind, guys, as when you actually write it down on a piece of paper. It actually sticks differently in our brains, in the human brain, than just putting it down in a list on your phone. The action of writing it totally changes things. And Adam, you were talking about that earlier. You found that to be something that happens. Now let's look at, you know, writing that list. How do you, you know, differentiate what you're going to do? And are you doing time blocking, or is it just a list of things that need to be accomplished?
Yeah, so for me, it is usually like a list of things that need to be accomplished. I'm trying to get better at understanding how long things are. Another tool I also use is a watch on the wrist, not on your phone, because the minute you look at your phone, it's a distraction. And you're gonna look and see, oh, I got a Facebook post, I better check on that. And you wouldn't have checked on that, you would have stayed focused and been take care of all those different things if you didn't look at your phone. But really, you just looked at your phone to see what time it was. But now you're gone and sitting there playing on your phone because it's a lot easier to play with your fingers than it is to go get dirty and fix a roof that needs to be, patched up, or that fence that needs to be replaced from all the bale twine that you got it all tied up with some screws in it. So you have to understand, like using things that are separate from your phone that allows you to be able to not be so distracted. And especially if you got ADD like me, I'm all over the place, and I usually want to go off of whatever snap inside my brain says to go do this, then that's what I'm going to go do. So if I see on my phone something easy to do, like reply on a post or something, that just popped up there, I'll choose to do that before I go do this, thinking I'm going to remember to go do all that other thing. And then all of a sudden, once I reply, and I'm like, what was I going to do again? Oh, I don't know. And then you just totally forget, because again, you just get distracted by your phone. So using your watch is a big deal to make sure that you're also seeing how long it's taking you to do tasks as well. So you can start understanding how long these things are actually going to really take. And that's what comes back down to what is possible for the day when you're looking at the list, what you actually could do. And like even when I'm like harvesting during harvest time, and I have to start, bucking the plants, and I have like racks and racks and racks of all these, hemp plants and stuff, and I have to go through there and buck them. I have to figure out how many of these racks is it going to take, like how many days I'm going to be doing this for. And so you have to start timing yourself. Okay, each rack is going to take about what, like, you got to check and go, okay, so it's this time. Let me see, finish up a rack, and then check again and be like, okay, that took me about 20 minutes. So I have 10 racks, 10 times 20, 200 minutes. Get closest to what you could do as far as like, a few hours, and, divide off of that. And it's important to make sure that you're keeping track of all the tasks and time and, restraints and all those things too. So then you start getting that feeling, and then you can start planning accordingly by how many days you have in the hours of the day,
And then if you have somebody like my wife, you have to be focused at this time of year on your farm property so things get done in the timely manner. And then, she has to go, Ken, because I'm bad for that stuff too, right? So I don't know if your wife gets you on that as well, but I think we all of us get that. But I do want to point something out, guys, is when you write it down, once it's done and you cross it off, in your brain, having accomplished that little mini goal is very, very good psychologically for the human being as well. So make those little goals, right? And celebrate, going, yeah, I got that done today. It's going to be that much better for you in an energetic side as well.
Yes, yeah. And remembering to cross it off the list is a really big thing, because sometimes I'll do this whole list and then I'll take care of about 5 or 6 of them and still feel like I didn't do anything. And then I'm like, and then it's like, then that messes you up psychologically, because you're just like, man, no matter how hard I feel like I've just worked my butt off, but I don't feel like I did anything. So you got to grab that list, start crossing it off. And like, so you're allowing yourself to say, hey, yeah, my hard work is doing something. I am finishing these things off. It is possible to get caught up here, and then you start thinking positive about it and going back to knowing that you can actually accomplish these things, because otherwise your brain's going to get overwhelmed, and then that part inside of you that's going to try to save your life, it's just going to be like, shut it off. There you go. I helped you out. And then you're going to be like, whoa, yeah, I don't remember what I was going to do today. But that's just, survival mechanism from dealing with stress and stuff, that, or you start getting panic attacks and anxiety and all that, so.
Well, and that's it. It's those setting yourself up to win. And that's what you're doing, Adam, by having that list. And I don't know if you do this once you've crossed everything out that you've got done and you still have stuff on. Do you put that onto your next day's list and then add more?
Yes. Yeah. And you're always going to have more. So, yeah, but you got to make sure that rolls over to the next day and then just keep staying focused and tied down to, not just jumping onto something else, because you're going to find other things. And it's really hard. And I'm saying this, because I'm, preaching to the choir here myself, like, I'm saying this to teach myself a little bit too, but you're going to find a whole bunch of things that you have to do while you're taking care of that list. And so you have to keep adding that list, and you'll see how fast just doing those 3 tasks just now added on to 5 or 6 other tasks of things that you have to do, other projects that need to be done and all that stuff. But writing it down and then just understanding those are projects for another day, they don't have to do today, and just keeping focused on that and then crossing off them and taking them by prioritizing which task is the most important too. So, and sometimes it is just as simple as, well, you have to spend time with your family because you haven't even done that. Like, people need your time too. And especially, the wife, the kids, all that, they're just as important as a job that you're doing out there on your homestead. So it's a reason why.
Well, when this past Wednesday, I went to the dinner theater with my wife. It was her 70th birthday. So that was something I had to do. I might not have necessarily wanted to do that, but I had to do that because happy wife, happy life, so it's like, I love my wife. So I went and I actually enjoyed it, but don't tell Lily I enjoyed it because she'll want me to go do it again.
Yes. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean on that stuff. And yeah, and my lady, she's expecting. And so, having the appointments.
Congratulations.
And stuff, Thank you. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a beautiful, healthy boy. We just got done with the appointment yesterday and all that and stuff. And so making sure that we had to do that. And actually, when you called me yesterday with that whole panic moment there, I was on my way back. And it just happened to be right when we were in the past where we don't have service. So when I was answering the phone, I couldn't even hear you or anything. But we were just coming right back from that appointment actually in Vegas and all that. So so I didn't get anything done yesterday. So then today felt like I had to really do everything up. But it was the most important things that I did do, which was attending that appointment, going over there and seeing my little beautiful boy's face and stuff. It's looking gorgeous than ever. And we're very happy and we're excited to have him here in July and stuff, and having a little extra hand on the farm around here. So.
Well, I think it's going to be a couple of days before the farm hand is really helping, but
it's taking more time and more things to do actually. So, but yeah, that's part of it. That's part of life. It's always new stuff that's going to be added every day, and so you got to manage your time every day. That's right. Yeah, it's very important for everything.
It's really having that guideline, having those. We call them SOPs, standard operating procedure. There's certain things that you have to do every single day. And then there's everything else. Like you have your goats. You have to go and feed and water those goats every single day. And you can't miss it, because if you miss it, then you're in trouble, because they're gonna be coming after you going, hey, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, straight anarchy on the farm is what I call it. It's just they start yelling, they'll start breaking out, they're gonna go and feed themselves, the dogs will go wild, they just start, body checking and just like, David, where's the food? We're on our own, we're not getting fed anymore, we have to go find our own sources of food, and running around eating sticks and weird crap off the ground, if you're not gonna feed me, I'll feed myself, it's just, it goes nuts. And anytime you're even slightly late, those goats are just screaming and everything just starts falling apart. So it's always right when I wake up to at 3, no matter what, at 3 o'clock I have to be feeding those animals, and stuff. And we also got some baby chickens now too. We got about 13 of them. Might have bit off a little bit more than what we needed there, but we got 13 because we were expecting some fatalities and everything. But so far, they all been surviving, and they're really healthy, and they're growing, and they eat a lot. So it's even more mouths to feed around here, and that's a whole nother thing there. But eventually, they're going to start, paying off their work and stuff, by laying the eggs and all that and providing for us. So.
And that's the thing is they actually are going to be giving back to you, and you're feeding them now, and they're going to be feeding you very shortly as well. So you've got the goats, you've got the chickens. What other livestock do you have, Adam? Or I know you got a snake here and there.
Yeah. We get nice, cool surprises from the native ecosystem that we have around here. Yeah, snakes. That was a big thing. We were talking a little earlier about that. We have a bull snake actually on our property, maybe a couple or two, which I'm totally fine with, but they do resemble a lot of times like a rattlesnake. And you got to be very, careful in understanding your ecosystem, because one time when I first saw it, I killed one and I saw it, because I was like, it's a snake. No, not having that. And then later on, I realized that they're territorial and would actually keep away the bad snakes away, such as the rattlesnakes. That even my neighbor right next to me had like rattlesnakes in his yard, but no bull snakes because they're territorial. And my bull snake lives right by my well house, right under it. And there's probably a couple other ones too, like, gardener snakes and corn snakes, things like that kind of come around here. This California king snake, and that's not poisonous either, but they're all very territorial, and they keep rattlesnakes away, which is our nightmare, that the whole thing goes from the west to everywhere. Wherever rattlesnakes are, everyone knows to fear these things because of how horrible the death it would be to get bit by one of those things, or even have one of your animals get bit by them that doesn't know how to stay away from it. So we get those. Very happy about that because rattlesnakes were way too close. But we also have tortoises. A desert tortoise is on my Facebook page. I put a little post there. She came back early today. She knew exactly when these mulberry trees were going to wake up, and they just started to wake up. Every May is mulberry season, so they're about to start dropping in May. But the leaves are out there, so when I see her, I'll pick those up and just give it to her. It's got to be the same tortoise because she knows and recognizes me and walks right up to me like, "Hey, where's my free meal?" And
hey,
so
Dad, feed me.
Yeah, feed me back. I'm like, yeah, you're a little early this year because usually she'll wait till about June or July, but she popped up pretty early. So she would come back, every once in a while and stuff. And it's just cool to be able to just wake up in the morning, go take care of chores, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, hey, hello, didn't see you there. And she's just like, hey, thought you just decide to drop by our little oasis in the desert and get some water and some free food,
Yep. Well, and that's what you're creating in a lot of ways, is that oasis in the desert. Now, you have a lot of different plants. You have your own garden. You have, of course, the hemp garden. You're doing different products, CBD products.
Yep.
You're also doing the hemp kashi, the hemp char.
Yep.
You've got different sizes. Just let me jump onto your website because I actually have it brought up on my other screen here.
Cool.
Share that. So, guys, you can get hemp char and the hemp caution. You actually have them. These are small portions, but you have them in pails, I think you were saying.
We have a hemp kashi bucket and stuff. That's what we're about to launch that too. That looks like this. It's like pretty much you can make your own bucket, but this one is just like made for hemp kashi specifically. And you can use it also with any sort of bokashi that you got and all that too. But it comes with a little strainer in the insides and some other things too. When you get the bucket, it has a really nice tight lid on there too, which I like because you want to make sure it's airtight when you're using this stuff. It comes with like a little pail, so you could use a pail and stuff to collect your hemp kashi tea and use it with your plants and stuff. Like mix it anywhere from 1 to 500 to 1 to 1,000 parts water. And then also comes with one of these little mashers. It's pretty good plastic too. You push it down, after you put your layer of compost in it, and then you put your hemp kashi on top. You can even put some of the hemp char in there too if you want, and then it'll help to break it down when you throw in the compost later. But then you push it out, get all the air pockets out, and then put the lid back on, and then wait a few days, and you'll get the tea out here. And it has a little device that kind of shows you the open and closed positions and stuff, and you can control the flow in that. And I did all the graphics and made the pictures, the label and all that stuff. Very proud of that. And then you also get a scoop with the bucket too. So if you don't want to just pour it in there, you can just use a scoop and sprinkle it that way. But also, what I like about it the most, though, too, is it has like this insert there. You can kind of see that insert pops out nice and easy. So after you're done, when the stuff starts fermenting and breaking down, it's ready to go into the soil. You can just dump it out and then rinse this thing off, and then rinse your bucket out, and then put it right back in and ready to go again. So it holds a good 4-gallon capacity on there. So that's one of the big products that we have to go with our hemp char and
Yep.
our hemp char and our hemp kashi, these two things. So we only have one size available right now, and they're 16 ounces, which is about 1 pound. And to make sure we fill them up really nicely there. And we're going to also, with hemp char, eventually start having different ones. Like we're going to have the dust and then the gradual. But right now we just have like the mix. So it has everything in there from the large graduals. Anything less than about a quarter of an inch or so, because we only sipped it out of a quarter of an inch. So we get the larger things out of there. But anything less than that in there, including like the dust and all that stuff, because dust could be used different things for making different type of biofertilizers on your for your homestead and stuff when you're growing stuff. That's a really big thing, and that's what we're trying to show you guys, to be able to use these, but to also be making your own farm exclusive fertilizers, from like the type of weeds that you have. We're really big about fermented plant extracts, as well as compost teas and all that stuff too. And we're going to have like a worm bin here in a little bit too. Just put mine together. I'm going to start offering that on the website as well. We're going to have a product line of not like fertilizers that kind of help out fertilizers, such as like humic acid, fulvic acid, amino acids, and also our seaweed extract too. And so those are going to be the main things, and we'll show you how to make your own fermented plant extracts and some of the movies we start doing as well, and how to add those type of things in there to make them even more powerful and more boosted up and everything too, and how also to do it with like compost teas. So you're getting the anaerobic bacteria that are good, as well as the aerobic, things that need oxygen, bacteria and microbes in general that way. So, it's good to get as much diversity as possible when you're growing with microbes. You want as much diversity. And if you have these that could actually go without oxygen, as well as ones that could go with oxygen, then you're just getting more diversity, and it's going to lead to a lot more successful growth.
Well, because people need to understand that as this biology goes into the layers of your soil, some are going to go filter through to the anaerobic area. The aerobic area is going to be staying on top. And then you've got the effective microorganisms, which can exist in both. I look at that as the transport division, old truck driver, right? So,
yes.
It's moving the material from lower down in your soil structure up to the higher levels, where the biology can then use that material for building your plants. And that's what we want, because we want those materials to be available for the cells in our plant, because then when we consume that, guess what? Hey, our bodies get it too.
That's right. And most of those microbes that are in there, from being anaerobic to aerobic, are existent inside of us already. We're just giving them more, so then they could be doing more with it and making it more, vigor and stuff, and grow much better. So they're already existing within us and existing through the plants. But if you give them more of that, they don't have to make so much energy to create these things and have to produce, on their own, because they're going to be around there. So that's what the importance is about that. And they're producing, and they work synergistically. The main leaders that are coming out from these, compost teas to like, the fermented plant extracts, the main leaders inside there are they're existent within our body, and they're the ones that are actually doing the most. But there's so much, it's all about the biology, like you say, it's all about the biology, and there's so much going on there. We're learning every single day all these different type of things, and learning all these different type of nematodes that exist from different type of protists even, and all that, and the whole nitrogen cycle. They all depend on each other and stuff, really. And so a lot of people say, like, oh, I don't use this type of microbe because I don't like that. Like, I've heard a lot of bad things about even trichoderma, which is another kind of thing that we've been working with. But a lot of people are afraid of it damaging their arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, which attaches to the roots and stuff as an endomycorrhizal fungi. And they're worried about it killing that off, because that helps with drought, and it produces water, helps with the nutrient uptake, for the plant and stuff. So it's a really good thing. But once that is established, and you start using compost and start having a good ecosystem already there, the tricontrol, it's not going to do anything but just do what it's meant to do and mine away, break down cellulose, break down those wood chips, and help even feed that arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. But if things start getting out of whack, that's when it's going to be like, oh, you're in the way? Well, bap, you're dead now. I'm going to feed you and make you into energy that way, So it's about making sure your soil is balanced at all times. And these things will work synergistically. Now, there probably is some very aggressive type of trichodermas out there that can attack the arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, but the types that we use on our farm and stuff don't do that. And they work synergistically. And most of the studies that have been out already show that they work synergistically with our arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi and stuff. So just keep on the studies,
The thing that people really need to understand is that predator-prey model. And you can have all the mycorrhizae fungi you want. You can be putting it on by the truckload. But if you don't have what feeds that, and you don't have the other species in there, then you're the balance. You put it out of balance, and all of a sudden, all that dies because they don't have what they need to survive. And it might not even be their direct food source, but their food source is food source, and that food source is food source. And it has to be the complete ecosystem inside of the soil structure that's going to really, create that balance. Like I had Gardener Scott on here a couple of days ago, and he started his garden 5 years ago. And now he doesn't really need to add anything because he has all of that soil life there already. So he's got the full cycle going. He's got the predator prey going. And that's what you're building, especially in the desert.
Yes.
You're lacking a lot of that life forms, or those life forms being active. It's not that they're not there, because they are there, but they're not active. It's like a seed. If you don't have water, the seed's never going to pop. It's just going to sit there for millennia. But once those right conditions are there, it's going to come back. The biology will come back as well, yet biology only moves 1 inch per year. So it's really hard for that to expand back out. That's where we, as the farmer, can add that in. And it's like sending in 100,000 atoms to go out into the field to work up the field and to do all the work, where one atom can only do one small field, where 100,000 atoms can do thousands of acres.
That's right, exactly. And I love that you're using that as an example, because if I had thousands of me, I'd be so much more ahead.
Well, that's why you're having your son here in July, or June or July.
Yeah, July. Yep. Exactly. Guys are making my 1,000 atoms right now. My wife's gonna be very busy popping them out. So.
Oh man, your wife's gonna hit you in the frying pan. I think mine's gonna come from upstairs and do the same thing.
Oh yeah. We need the farm hands, honey. We need the farm hands. Nothing beats free family labor, I tell you.
Well, and that's where a century or more ago, the farm family was 7 kids, 12 kids, lots of kids, because it was free labor on the farm.
Yes, that's right. And then it wasn't too long ago like that either. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that there's things like we got some really nutcase politicians up here right now. They're saying they want by 2040 that you can't go to the store to afford your food. You're going to have to go out and become hunter-gatherers if you want to eat. And that's the mentality of some of our politicians. We have an election here in a couple of days. We're hoping to get rid of those psychopaths and get some reasonable individuals back in our government. But it's crazy how people's minds work when they have an agenda. We have an agenda of putting the biology back in our soil so we can have healthy plants, and healthy plants make us healthy when we consume them.
That's right.
But, Adam, there's so many other topics I want to touch on. That's why I'm going to try to have Adam back on, on a monthly basis, guys, because there's so much. But let's just focus right now on your hemp kashi.
Mhm.
So, what exactly is hemp kashi?
Yeah, so hemp kashi is the same thing as like what regular bokashi is, but it's made from the biomass waste from our after we do our extraction. It's just made from the biomass waste of the hemp flower itself. So we do our extraction. We take as much of the cannabinoids and the terpenes out as much as possible to make our full
Mhm.
extract cannabis oil that we then infuse into hemp seed oil. So we stay 100% hemp, and that's what makes our tincture, which is our main source or main product for making other types of topicals and things like that that we have in the store as well. And after we're done with it, we have a whole bunch of biomass that usually we just throw in the compost and just mix it up and treat it like nothing. But we don't have a source like rice hulls or oats or barley, things like that grow normally, that where you have like these off stuff like bio waste that you could just
Yeah.
easily get that other places do have. So we literally don't have, we have to buy that stuff in order to make our own bokashi. And and then all of a sudden a light bulb goes off in my brain. I'm like, well, let's try this. What you could make it even have like coffee grounds and all this stuff. I'm like, what if I just use my bio waste for my hemp plant? Then just try it. And so I tried it out. It worked phenomenally well. I know a lot of times you have to put like nutrients and other type of things, like in the rice hulls, you might have to add a little extra or something like that to make sure the microbes grow right. But the most you have to do is just grow it with a little bit of molasses, and the microbes immediately start feeding off of the plant itself. Like they just love what it is and stuff. And so it's been working really well. It helps us close our carbon loop. So then we're just literally only taking like the cannabinoids and then putting everything back into the soil to grow more. So we're literally using hemp to grow hemp. And that also ties in with the hemp char, because like the stems and sticks and the things that are more cellulose based, we could make hempcrete out of that, but it's a different type of strain. It doesn't grow tall like a tree, like a bamboo, like the way the most like ideal thing of hemp grows. These ones grow bushy, like straight marijuana cannabis, and they look a lot the same. So it's hard to separate the bast fibers, which is the fibers on the outside of the stick, from the woodiaceous herd core, which is like that woody part inside the middle part. You have to do a lot of sifting, a lot of processing. So it's really not practical to use it to make things like the big thing about hempcrete, that's going on and stuff. It's not really practical for that. So a lot of times farmers just don't really know what to do with it. And so the best thing to do is, burn it. So, but you got to burn it right. And if you burn it right, then you're making, the hemp char itself. And so that's another thing too, is being able to use that. So then we're putting that back into the soil, as well as the bio waste from the flower back into the soil. And we're really not taking so much from the soil itself, because it's all going right back in to be able to grow the plant again. And so it's going to be contributing, closing that carbon loop for us. And also it has a great, it's like, I think a 16-to-1 nitrogen to carbon ratio. I think I'm not sure. I have to check my notes on that, but that makes it really good and ideal for the microbe set that we use, which is an EM set, which consists of yeast, purple non-sulfur bacteria. It's in there, and a few other things.
Lactic acid bacteria.
Yeah, lactic acid bacteria. Yes, that's a big one. Yeah, yeast, lactic acid bacteria, and purple non-sulfur bacteria. Those are like the big major, like 3 things that are in there. And every single time when we're about to like sell bag or anything like that, we always re-inoculate it. So we'll make it, inoculate it, dry it out, and then we'll take that dried substance once we sell bag and then put a little bit more of that in there. And molasses, of course. Molasses is another thing that helps to feed those microbes that every microbe just kind of likes to eat. So we put that in there with it. And then we dry that out, and then we'll put that stuff a little bit back more into it before we sell it off. So it comes to like, wet and even more reactivated, double activated and ready to go. So right when you start using it for your compost or for direct soil amendment, it's already charged and it's ready to go. And we do that same thing with our hemp char as well. Double inoculation. It's just been what's been really effective to be able to make sure that right when you get it and you start using it, you start seeing these immediate results and everything. So.
Well, and that's the beauty of it, is seeing people want to see that immediate result, and you've created that. Now, I do want to ask, what percentage do you actually put back on your personal soil compared to what you're selling?
Ooh, that's a number I got to start really paying more attention to. I'll have to run through it. I have like the notes as far as like, the amount of pounds that I'm taking out, and then I have to compare that to after how many pounds of hemp kashi that I make, and then how many pounds of hemp char that I make, and then minus that out from the pounds that way. So then I'll be able to see like if it's like tying back in, or like,
Mhm.
obviously your harvest should be more than what is taken out to. And then also another variable would be how much seeds, like how much we got seeded that year. There's
Yeah.
always like a male plant that will pop up and it will start seeding your crop. And then you have to go through a whole process of like sifting those seeds out and taking those. And that's a whole nother thing in itself, where I can start making even my own hemp seed oil or something. And the seed itself, it has high protein, it has
Mhm.
high omega-3s, fatty acids and things like that, and it can be used to feed even livestock around here. Chicken eggs have natural sources of omegas in them too, so feeding them to chickens is going to increase that, and they're going to be able to have a lot more omegas inside their eggs. So feeding it back to your livestock is going to actually enhance your livestock with things that what's good from the plant that's good for us is also good for them as well, and that gets tied into that too. So now you're actually having a new type of like eggs compared to the other one people, because they're not getting fed these hemp seeds or the
Mhm.
cannabinoids and like the terpenes that these things have inside of them, so they're not as enhanced. And that's another thing that using the hemp kashi and the hemp char could actually do for you. Well, the hemp char is probably well burnt out, but like for the hemp kashi, there's this the micro traces of these cannabinoids and terpenes that fruit
Mhm.
naturally already has its cannabinoids in there. And, you have an endocannabinoid system inside your body, and that's what the plant works off of, and that's why it's such a medicinal plant. And
Mhm.
be able to give that back into, and you grow your tomatoes, you grow your peppers and all that stuff with this, it's going to be able to absorb at the root source these cannabinoids, and actually probably have a higher content of cannabinoids and terpenes and stuff inside of it, making it a higher product.
Mhm.
It's like this is growing by something with cannabinoids already, so it's absorbing that, because whatever's in that soil, your fruits and vegetables are absorbing. So the more you
Yeah.
put in there, the more what you're gonna get. You get what you put in. So
Well, and the reason I'm asking, how much you're using in both phases is I want to understand more on how much your soil is actually improving, because you're putting a lot back in, because you're drawing things out of your soil structure to build the plant. And people are wanting to create a living soil that recycling itself, where they're not having to add so much. How, you I mean, I can't even remember. Have you been on that farm for how many years now?
I've been here since 2016. I got my
Mhm.
first hemp license to start growing, even though I was trying other things before, back in 2018. And so that's when I
Mhm.
started to actually make my own the hemp strain and stuff. I got my seeds from some sketchy source, so it was actually considered as a rogue seed. So I had to roll the cards and hope it wasn't going to be hot. And
Yeah.
luckily it wasn't. And so since it wasn't, I've just been training that seed for this climate since that time and everything. So yeah, since 2018 really is when I've been doing it.
So, so how have you, like, you've been growing in the same basic area? Have you seen a real big change in your soil structure? Like, because basically you're growing, started out with sand.
Mhm.
Are you seeing it turn more into a soil now?
Yes, I'm seeing that a lot more in the high tonal rise system. I had a
Mhm.
better system growing in there than out in the field. I had a few years of going, like trying to go more with the typical way to grow in a nice climate with no rocks, I guess. And I tried to
Yeah.
start doing those things. I had it down the first year, like 2019 and stuff, like 2018 to 2019. I had the system down. I was drilling the holes, and I was just going to reuse those holes. And then I signed up with the NRCS, and I had to do a cover crop out there. I didn't realize that I could have just done the cover crop in the high tonal rice system and got like the same amount paid back to me. And but instead, I tried to do that because I also wanted to build the soil out there too. So I
Yeah.
was working 10 times as hard as I had to do. And I bought, like cultivation devices on my ATV since I can't afford a tractor yet. And at this time and stuff. And it was just, I was going through bits and parts, the rocks and stuff were so hard. I was tining it. I didn't even try to till it. I ended up planting alfalfa, thinking I was going to be a cover crop. And then that thing is obviously it's a perennial. and you don't use perennials because they just keep popping back up. And so they were like struggling. So even like the grass blend I got, it was like, that after that COVID time that was going on there. So the NRCS didn't have much representatives to even come out and tell me. One lady like told me that was okay to use this mix, and even though it wasn't, it had alfalfa in it and these perennials. They're in between jobs by the time like I find that out. It was someone new there, and so they didn't really know how to really help because like cold just kind of messed it up everything. So there was like a rough patch, and I was going through it and feeling it on my farm. And but yeah, I had it down the first time where I could just drill those holes and I would have been growing just fine that way. But so now I had to come back and try to figure out, use everything that I learned, because there's no such thing as like failure. It's just learning the hard way,
Yep.
And when you learn the hard way, like for me at least, this is how it is. If I learn the hard way, I learn it really well. And then so the advice that I give you is coming from sheer experience of knowing what it's like to do this, like why you don't plant perennials as a cover crop because they will come back and they will smother out your plants a lot of times. So a lot of those earlier, just more, I guess, recent to earlier grows were kind of just experimental, but I was still getting good results from like the quality of the plant and all that stuff. But I also learned, and I compared our full extract cannabis oil that we got out of every single grow, and they were as far as quality went was like about the same. It's just I was getting more of it the bigger they grew and the better the soil. So I was able to do less, like put less energy to get more of it. So I was getting a higher percent yield is what that's called. So instead of getting like 40 grams per pound or something like that of the full extra cannabis oil, you start getting more like somewhere like, 80 to like 100 and something, because then it's just more in that. So so I'm trying to learn that. But now we finally got a good system down. It's called our regenerative ag system. I have a video on it that we did last year. I'm going to be doing this video where we're going to have it to where we did that soil test in the last video that we did with
Leighton.
Thank you. Yeah. And so we're going to compare that to what's going to happen this year. And we're going to see how the soil structure is actually going to be building and stuff. And so this way we're going to be using that same thing out in the field as well. I'm getting a bunch of compost going right now. I'm going to start doing rows and planting the compost down there, and then also holes into the and we do the rows, and then I'm going to put a weed bearer down there. So if there is any more perennials growing in there, which probably is still alfalfa out in that field, even though I haven't been watering it, trying to kill it off and stuff, but it's probably still going to pop right back up. The seed went to seed, so I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. So I'm going to put a weed bearer to kind of keep everything down in there. We're going to lasagna the compost that we have. We have animal manure from the goats and the chickens all mixed up together. And then we also have wood chips and stuff from a local sources from like trees around here. So it has like natural, fungi and stuff like that are found naturally inside here, adapted to the desert climate and everything too. And we're going to lasagna that up and then cover it and then drill right into it with the weed cover, the weed barrier, and then plant inside those in those holes. So they're going to be in rows, and then we're going to also have row of like regular soil or like regular rocks, I guess you can say, because we don't got soil, we got rocks. And so we're going to have those in between, and we're going to just kind of like have like, about 8 or so rows going there. I'm doing half an acre, so it's half the amount of energy that I had to be doing and putting into from last year. And then I'm just going to compare that and see how much more my percent yield has increased and stuff. So I'm really excited about it this year. I really feel like this is the system that I've been waiting for, and it's also going to be just improving every year. We could roll back, add more that we want to be putting on there. Eventually, I might be able to even do just like row cover crops. So then I just grow a cover crop in that row, use a little sprinkler that just hits that one row there, adds the green manure like we have going on in the high tunnel rice system. And that's going to, I think that's going to make just a much more superior product and stuff that way and save us time.
And it's adding that organic material back in, guys. Plants feeding plants. When that breaks down, the biology has already broken it out of the sand, silt, and clay to put into the cell structure of the plant. It's a lot easier for the biology to break that out of the plant than out of a piece of sand, So you said, or you mentioned you're bringing in wood chips. Are you bringing in any other organic material as well as wood chips?
Yes, yeah. Like I said, we're doing the stuff from our like the goat pen and stuff. We had a lot of compost in there. I just got a tractor this last year. It's just not even a tractor. It's called a mini skid steer. And I love the thing. It's perfect for composting. It's exactly what I wanted it for, and it works really well. It's got a nice little. I got a skeleton bucket. I got a normal front loader bucket, And then I got also a backhoe bucket on there, and just had little attachments you could attach on there. Perfect for composting. I'm just glad my wife got that job there that she has and was able to afford to pay for it and stuff. So
Yep.
yeah, it was good to be able to have that. So I've been using that to build up a nice system of compost. If I need any extra compost, I will be adding in some cow manure from our local dairy that's out in like Amargosa, which is a little bit closer to Death Valley than we are. And there's a guy that takes that stuff over here, and then he mixes it up and turns it into a good compost. And I know his system. I used some of his stuff before in the past and stuff. And yeah, it's a pretty good like mix and stuff that he's got going there. So I use that. And then also our local nursery supplier has a supplier in Vegas that actually uses all the stuff from trees, because in Vegas they don't have a free dump like we do here, and they have to pay to go to the dump. So this guy had an idea of taking all the stuff that landscapers would be just throwing away into the dump, and save them money by having them just dump it off at his place, and he grinds it up and makes a superior compost out of it. And it's some really good stuff. It's all tree based and plant based and all that from local plants that are growing out here. So it's that's a really good mix. So that's another thing I'm going to be using if I have to outsource any of it. If I can't fill up my whole field with what I have, I'll be using that. And then once that's in the ground, it's in the ground, and it's going to be building up, and I won't have to add so much next year or anything. It's just going to be, planting them in. And that's the idea, is to be able to add less every year and still have that soil be building up on its own. So especially with microbes and all that stuff too, having those microbes survive throughout the whole system, the whole year. So you don't have to keep re-inoculating and stuff. So.
Well, and that's the thing. A lot of people and local, and we always talk, buy local, buy from your local stores, etc. But also, Korean natural farming talks about it a lot. Don't go, 1,000 miles away to do an extraction, an IMO, an indigenous microorganism extraction, and don't go, 1,000 feet higher than you are, because it's a different bunch of microbes. But what you're doing is you're bringing local biology that exists in the system already. Yes. It's like I can bring a garter snake from Canada, bring it down to where you are. It isn't going to survive. It doesn't have the right biology and the right life in it to survive there for very long. And that's brilliant, Adam, that you're able to bring in local materials that have their biology, etc., that is in your area, that is already adapted to your area. And that's something that people really need to think about, because when you go to a box store and buy, whatever, that could be coming from 10,000 miles away. It doesn't have the same biology.
Yes, yeah, it most likely is, for sure. And because that's how the industrial composting system, I guess you could say, works. That you'll go over there and buy Scott soil or something like that. It's literally made thousands, maybe even out of the different country that could be brought in and stuff. So it's not going to be climatized to your area at all. So it's very important, I think, to be able to get locally sourced stuff, because like I was saying, it's going to have certain microbes in there that are already been adapted to the heat, because it's been growing inside a tree that's been doing just fine, in this type of desert climate and stuff. So yeah, that was exactly my idea. And I think that's why I'm pretty sure I'm onto a good thing this year. And I'm just really excited to get it started, and yeah, I feel really good about it. I feel like I finally kind of, after all these years, got a good system that's actually going to be, growing abundantly, and I'm probably going to get the best yield I've got so far. So I'm getting excited.
Well, and it's amazing the progression that you've made. Like, you started with sand in the high tunnel, and now you've got soil in the high tunnel, and your open field. You started with rock, but now it's starting to become soil, more soil.
Yeah.
Now, Adam's been mentioning digging holes, guys, and he actually uses a post-hole auger. He's got a power one, a gas one, that you can get hand ones and dig these holes, and you're putting in the bokashi, the biochar, etc.
Yes.
And you're doing, I think you're doing it every year, and are you moving like 3 or 4 feet away from last year's hole, or are you doing the same area?
I'm trying to stay in the same area, but it never matches up. Even if I use a different type of like the same reed bearer that I used from last year, it's still off some way, or like I didn't put it in the right row, and so it's still differently. But yeah, to me, I think that's okay because I'm still going to be mixing up this dirt, and that hole of inoculated soil stays there, and that those microbes stay there. And as long as I'm growing something like when I start growing my cover crop, that moisture is there, so then the microbes are still active. There's food source from that plant of the root system that was there, where that's slowly dying. It starts feeding on those dead plants already, and some of those plants even stick around and live a little bit longer because they'll get frostbite like maybe once or twice or something during the year, just enough to kill them off. But that root system's still alive. So sometimes you'll see like a little, something grow out of it, and it's like trying to survive, but like then it gets cold again, it kind of knocks it down again. And so these suffering plants actually keep that root system alive, which means that my arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi or my microbe treatments that I've done last year are still in that root system. So by the time I go and I lay down my cover crop again, I'm not killing it all up. Instead, I'm using a system. This year I did a tining where I just kind of like scrape it, which tinings are like little fingers, like little forks. And they'll grab the soil and they'll kind of scrape it and make little furrows of lines in there. And then we spread the seeds out with a little seed sprayer that kind of just throws the seeds out everywhere. And then we'll take a rake and just rake it down, which is like the tiner, but only more finer. And it just rakes the soil on top. So then the soil goes on top of there. And then we take our what's called a cultipacker. And we just took that and cultipacked it down. So it presses it, make sure we have good seed to soil contact. And that system works so much better from last year's system, which we just used a cultipacker because we wanted less ground disturbance. We got a lot more of the seeds popping. And we used about 5 pounds of seed last year, and we used again 5 pounds of seed this year for our high tunnel, and we should have probably done like at least maybe at the most 2 pounds. Like it's all the stuff is so crowded in there. Like the daikon radishes are only growing on the edges where like the seeds barely hit, and so it's been just packed. Like, but we have like common vetch and all these things like the legumes, like peas coming through that are just looking so nice and just lush and green and stuff. So so now we know if we use that system, we don't have to be adding as much in the cover crop, and we could actually wait a little bit, like, save on money from having to buy more seeds and make that, 40-pound bag probably last a good, 10 years or so just in the cover for growing the cover crop. So, using that system. So and then we have that stuff on all the arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi is going to be on that dying plant. It's going to jump over to these now growing live plants from the cover crop, and we don't have to do any of the new inoculations or anything. So,
Well, I would actually suggest is not putting your holes in in the same area. Like I said, biology only moves 1 inch per year. So if you go a foot away and put a new hole in, you're adding that biology in a new area, because the old biology in your old hole, it's still there. It's still doing its job. So adding those new holes, you're actually able to spread the biology out that much faster and deeper, because it's that depth that you really want, because you want to get that life down deep in that structure of soil you've got. The better you do that, the more life is going to proliferate through your entire field than doing the exact same holes, digging up, because we don't want the disturbance. You're digging that up, so instead of digging it up, just keep adding new.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm definitely, that's the way it's going to be having to go, because I don't think I can line the holes up anyways anymore, especially after we roll down that, weed barrier and stuff, and then try to do it again and hit those same spots. You're not going to be able to hit the same spot. So, so.
Well, and if you were just doing a liquid inoculation, I would actually suggest go to your local arborist and get one of his, 3-foot spikes that they put into the ground and spray the liquid inoculant as you're going up. But for what you're doing, using the active biochar, etc., keep those holes a few feet away from each other, and in a few years or 6 or 10 years, you're going to have covered that whole field. And believe me, your watering is going to go down because the biology, that soil structure is going to be there because
Holding the
you know,
moisture.
you're not next to Death Valley and you're going, oh, you're you know, freezing. What the hell is that? You're like, how are you getting a hard frost in Death Valley? But yeah, that happens. But in that change of temperature, that dew point, you actually are drawing water moisture out of the air, even though there's not a lot there. You're drawing it, it's saving it. Your plants will actually do amazing things for you.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. That's good. That's great advice. It's really good. Yeah, another thing we do when we drill the holes, yeah, we're inoculating. We're putting like a handful of mixture, not just like of the hemp char and the hemp kashi and all that, but also a mixture of concentrated microbes of like from worms and stuff too. So we have the worm bin and stuff. My compost that I have by my house that I use from like my table scraps and stuff. When the things that I don't want to put into like the hemp kashi bucket or something like that, or if my hemp kashi bucket's too full, I'm just waiting for that to ferment. Then I'll start throwing them out there. And I threw like a handful of worms like about a year or two ago. And that handful of red wigglers just took over the whole thing, and they're doing just outstandingly well. And so now my compost there is just getting like really good. They're eating, you know, potato scraps and peels and all this stuff, and they're just loving it. They're doing really well. And so we're gonna take a handful of that, probably keep the worms in there, you know, like why not? You know, they're gonna help out and stuff, and then we'll mix that in, tumble it around with you know, the hemp kashi, the hemp char, and everything else that we got going on, you know, of any sort of good composts, and put about a handful of that into each of the holes. So then when we plant them in there, we kind of mix around with the native soil a little bit, and then put the plant in there and kind of work it right. And that's what they're going to be growing on. So they have a nice little, you know, power, little biology booster right there inside that soil. That's also mixed a little like 50-50 with the native soil. So then the roots would be able to be used to tasting that native soil and be able to branch out from that little, you know, pot in the earth, that little hole, and still be able to look out elsewhere for nutrients and stuff too. So.
And that's amazing, man, because it's gonna. I know it's going to work amazingly well. But Adam, we're over an hour. You've got more work to do, and we're gonna have you, like I said, try to have you on once a month to keep us updated on how things are going. But to end it off, I'm going to tell everybody what's coming up. Tomorrow we've got Paula Ruffin on, Dr. Paula Ruffin. And she's actually going to be doing shows every Sunday, Tuesdays, and I think she's doing something Mondays, but it's just a short clip on, you know, do's, don'ts, stuff like that, you know. But other than that, Monday we have Ecosphere Sciences, the Muncher, which is taking organic material, running it through biology, making a biological fertilizer, liquid fertilizer in 1 hour, instead of having a compost pile that's going over weeks or months. It's able to do it in an hour. We're going to have that on Monday. And then Dr. Paula with a friend of her, another chiropractor with her on Tuesday. Wednesday's me and Andy. And then we'll see what happens Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But guys, it's going to be an amazing week coming up. Adam, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experiences. And tell your wife congratulations as well.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Do you have any final words you would like to say to everybody, Adam?
Well, you know, I like to say a little bit my major philosophy in life a little bit here, which is pretty much, you know, life's going to be giving you shit, you know, and being a farmer is the best way to deal with it is through composting it. So compost it and grow something amazing out of it, guys, because that's how you deal with it. You're lucky if you get limes, you know.
You're lucky if you get worms.
Yeah.
Get worms. All right, guys. Perfect. We'll see you guys tomorrow.